Okay, first up we've got a bowline. So bowline starts with a little loop like this. I'll tie it a bit longer so I can have a tie off. Okay, so that's a bowline like that. Now a bowline, a good use for a bowline would be to attach back to your MRT device while you're setting on MRT. So it would like loop over a branch and then come back down to your device, and you could end the rope in a bowline and then attach that to your MRT device. Bowlines are relatively easy to untie after being loaded heavily, as long as the load's not being applied to the knot when you're trying to untie it. So you can tie off a bowline with a double stopper like this. That's one way to do it. Or you can tie off a bowline with a Yosemite finish, which is done like this. And you need a stopper knot or a tie off on a bowline, because with repeated loading and deloading of a bowline, the tail can actually creep. So as this bowline gets loaded and unloaded, the knot can sort of cause the tail to start creeping loose. So having a tie off like a Yosemite or a double stopper will prevent it from creeping out. If you have a stopper here, then the if the tail starts creeping, then the stopper prevents it from pulling fully out. And you could absolutely use a bowline with a tie off or a stopper knot for life support. Going to demonstrate a running bowline. So a running bowline is used to choke a bowline around an object. So you pass the rope over an object and then tie the bowline, but loop it around the rope. Tie that tight. There you have a bowline that's choked in on itself. So if we tighten that, it'll choke down on the object that you tie it around, like so. So a running bowline is really good for a canopy anchor, or it's good for attaching a rigging rope to a piece of log or a branch or something like that you want to cut out of a tree and lower down. A running bowline would generally be easy to untie after heavy loading. Next we have a bowline on a bight. So this one, you start tying a regular bowline, but past this bight, like so, and I'll just dress it a bit nicer. So a bowline on a bight, a good use for this knot would be as like a midline hauling knot, and it would generally be easy to untie under a heavy load. So that's bowline on a bight. Alpine butterfly is next. So there's a couple of different ways to tie this. An easy way is the hand wrap method. So 3 wraps, pass the outside into the middle, outside around the maul, and pull it tight. So that's a running Alpine butterfly. A good use for this knot is as you can make it into a canopy anchor. So if you can create a SRT canopy anchor by choking the Alpine butterfly around the end of the rope, and you can work on this end of the rope, or as any sort of midline attachment. It's got a lot of uses, and it is very difficult to untie if it's been heavily loaded. Next is a clove hitch with 2 half hitches. So that looks like this. Clove, I'm going to give myself a bit more rope. Clove hitch. And you finish it with 2 half hitches back on itself, like so. Now you finish it with 2 half hitches because a clove hitch is a hitch and it's not a knot. So theoretically, especially for wide diameter objects, if you didn't tie the 2 half hitches with repeated loading and unloading, or even with a constant load up to a certain force, the clove hitch can actually come undone. So the 2 half hitches are there to turn the clove hitch from a hitch into a knot, essentially. And you'd use this knot for rigging log or securing a rope. So rigging log as in, if this is a log and I wanted to cut off the tree, attach it like that, cut it off here. Next we have a cow hitch with a better half. So a cow hitch, when you're tying it, it's essentially creating a girth hitch, but it's a way of tying a girth hitch around wide diameter objects, or an object that you can't sort of like get the end of, a bit like this. You'd tie it a bit differently if you could get the end of it like that. So a cow hitch with a better half. A better half is essentially just adding 2 half hitches to the knot, to the cow hitch. Second one can make it a little, be a little bit difficult to tie. Okay, so that's a cow hitch with a better half. So you can see here, it's essentially just like a choked girth hitch. So why does the cow hitch need to be tied like that? The cow hitch needs to be tied off with 2 half hitches so that the tail doesn't creep and come out of the hitch, essentially. Especially if you've got it in configurations. Well, commonly a cow hitch is used in configurations such as for attaching a porter wrap to a base of a tree. So it's under getting repeatedly loaded and unloaded. So if you didn't have a tie off like this, then the hitch could creep loose. And similarly, it's commonly used when attaching block pulleys to rigging points. So again, it's getting loaded and unloaded. So if you didn't have these 2 half hitch tie-offs, the tail could creep out of the hitch and the whole thing could come undone and you could drop a massive log on someone. Next we have a timber hitch. So this one, it's sort of like a choke, I guess. Run it back on itself like this, and then you pass the tail through a minimum of 4 times. Like so. It's a timber hitch. So yeah, minimum number of turns when using a timber hitch is 4, and you would not use this knot to attach a load for dynamic rigging. If the knot's designed to be loaded in like this direction, so if you're using it for rigging, you'd want to use a half hitch up here. If it slips sideways, then it compromises the security of these wraps, and the knot can come loose, which would be catastrophic. So not to be used. You should not use this knot to attach a load for dynamic rigging. Now we have a round turn with 2 half hitches. So that looks like this. Make a round turn around the object that you're tying it to, half hitch, and second half hitch, and it sort of looks like that. Two strengths of this knot is that you can add additional turns to make the knot stronger and make this hitch easier. These 2 half hitches easier to untie after heavy loading. And it's an excellent knot for heavy loads. So turns applied to the timber will reduce the force applied on the hitches. Next we have a girth hitch. So if I'm tying a girth hitch around an object, it's going to look like this. That's a girth hitch. You can also tie a girth hitch onto a carabiner by making the knot like this. That's a girth hitch. A girth hitch can be used in a tree climbing system, say where you want to attach say you're climbing with an MRT system and you want to you don't have a spliced eye in one end of your rope, you can tie a girth hitch like this in a bowline onto a carabiner, and that'll hold the carabiner oriented nicely, as long as it's cinched down like that. Next we have a half hitch pre-knot. So a half hitch pre-knot looks like this. Purpose of a pre-knot is to add strength to, or add security to another system. So if you've got a rigging knot tied here, you can add extra an extra knot to securely cinch or like back up this knot, I guess. It also can change the balance point of a rigging system. And one strength of the half hitch pre-knot as compared to the Marline hitch pre-knot is that it can be untied easier under heavy load. Then we have a Marline hitch pre-knot. Marline hitch pre-knot, which looks like this. So one strength, I couldn't find anything written anywhere in the material about a strength compared to a half hitch pre-knot, but just from trying them out, the Marline hitch pre-knot, you can kind of like let go of it and it'll stay together, whereas a half hitch pre-knot, if you let go of it, it'll just collapse. So say you're in an awkward position and you don't have an extra hand to sort of hold the half hitch together while you tie another knot, or clip a carabiner around the rest of the log that you want to rig, then maybe a Marline hitch pre-knot is a good choice, because it's sort of, you can cinch it down on itself and it'll hold itself in place. Next we have a Marlinespike hitch. So that's a pretty easy one, just looks like that. This one, a good use for this would be sending a tool up to a climber, or sending anything up to a climber, typically just something that can be clipped into this. So we always use this for sending our pole saws up to a climber in the tree. It's important that this knot gets tied the right way. So this side of the knot, if you pull it, it tensions. So if you clip something in like that, as you pull up on this, if this is a heavy object, if it pulls down, it's just going to cinch the knot cinch the knot tighter. But if you have it the other way, if this object is heavy, as you pull down, it's not going to do it for me, but theoretically, if this is heavy enough, then this will just start coming undone, and if you've got enough rope, it'll come out. There it goes. Now we have a sheet bend. So a sheet bend is tied by making a loop in one rope. It's for tying two ropes together. Making a loop in one rope and cinching it around the other rope like that. So a good use for this knot would be to send a second rope up to a climber. So if there's a climber hanging in a tree and they want another rope, like a rigging rope or something like that, you can send it up that way. It's important to tie this knot the right way up, so that it doesn't slip on itself. So it's important to tie the sheet bend the right way up. So if I pull down on this end, this is cinching on itself. So if you're sending something up to a climber, it's likely going to be a heavier object. Let's say you're sending like a rigging system with a few pulleys. So you want to make sure that as it comes up, it's cinching down on itself. Whereas if it was the other way around, and this is the climber and this is the rigging system, then this rope isn't cinching on itself as much, so this like tail could theoretically pull out. A sheet bend is not an appropriate knot for life support. Next we have slippery sheet bend, so it's tied very much the same. Just instead of passing the end of the rope through itself, you pass a bight. That's what it looks like. Slippery sheet bend. Why would you make this slippery rather than using a regular sheet bend? Because when you get to the climber, all the climber has to do is pull on it and it comes undone. So it just saves the climber time and effort, or whoever's on the receiving end. Doesn't have to be a climber. And the difference between a bend, a hitch and a knot. A bend is a configuration whereby you join two ropes. Hitch is it's a configuration of rope that does not sort of cinch down on itself, and a knot is a configuration of rope that does cinch down on itself. Okay, so a bend is used to join two ropes, two separate ropes together. A hitch attaches a rope to an object, and a knot generally creates a loop or a stopper in a single rope. Next we have a double overhand knot, so that just looks like this. This is also commonly called a stopper knot, and a very common use of this knot is for when you're using a device on the active end of this piece of rope, so that if the device comes to the end of the rope, it doesn't just pop off the end. So that's why you would want to use a stopper knot at the end of a climbing line or a lanyard, so that your climbing device, if you reach the end of your rope and don't realise, so that your climbing device doesn't just pop off and you fall out of the tree. Next we have a rolling hitch. So I'm going to tie it on another rope. Don't tie this one a lot. That's a rolling hitch. Rolling hitch, good use for this would be to send another rope up, a rope up via another rope. And you might want to use a rolling hitch instead of a closed hitch because it cinches tighter. So if you wanted to send two ropes up, you wanted to send a rope up via one rope, a clove hitch it doesn't cinch down as hard, so there's more chance of it slipping, whereas if you load this end on a rolling hitch, it sort of cinches down on itself. Next we have a Zeppelin bend. So this one looks like this, and you pass the end through here, pass the end through here. So that's a Zeppelin bend. Need a bit more tail on this one. You need the minimum amount of tail you need should be equal to 5 times the rope diameter. So that's looking a bit better. And a good use for this knot would be to join 2 ropes together for non-life support. Next we have a double fisherman's. Looks like this. We go over and away. Over and away. So when you tie it, it should sort of cinch down on itself, should fit snugly. Both knots should fit snugly on each other like that, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. So a good use for the double fisherman's bend is joining 2 ropes together, and you definitely shouldn't use this as a way of joining 2 rigging ropes together for a heavy load, because once you tighten this thing, it is really hard to get undone. Next we have a Flemish bend. So that's done by making a figure 8 in one rope and then retracing it with another. So Flemish bend. A good use for this knot would be to join 2 climbing ropes together. Now we have a twin bowline bend. So that's tied by doing this. So that is a twin bowline bend. So a twin bowline bend would be a good knot to join two rigging ropes together for a heavy load, as it's really easy to untie after being heavily loaded. It is a suitable knot for life support so long as you had backups. So tying stoppers in the tails, or I would say tying stoppers in the tails is the best way to back this knot up. Next we have the scaffold knot. That's the scaffold knot. This is the scaffold knot with a carabiner. So normally you tie it as like a termination knot, or to hold a carabiner onto the end of a rope. So the minimum length of tail that should be retained with this knot is 5 times the rope diameter, and this is an appropriate knot for life support. Next we have a prusik hitch. So you always hold next to, first you need a prusik loop, which is just like a small piece of cord. The cord type depends on what you're using it for, and it's just joined together to form a loop with a double fisherman's bend. So you're essentially just passing the end of it through itself like this. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like pretty standard number of wraps for a prusik hitch. You can use this hitch with 4 wraps or 6 wraps. Whether you use it with 4 or 6 depends on the diameter of the hitch material, the hitch loop, or the prusik loop, and the diameter of the rope, and like how thick or thin they are compared to each other, and also what material they're made out of, etc., etc. More loops means more friction. So if you got a really thick prusik and a thin rope, you need more loops. Thin prusik, thick rope is less loops. You always test prusik hitches before using them, because you got to make sure you've got the right amount of friction. So if I hadn't tied enough, I would always pull on this one to make sure that this actually cinches before I use it, before I attach to it. If I haven't had enough loops, then it can just slide down the rope. Or if you've had too many, you can't actually slide it down the rope, especially after you've loaded it. It can be too hard to get undone and it'll slow you down. And that is the prusik hitch. Next we have a Blake's hitch. Ooh. So that one is to 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps around the top and back up through 2 wraps. And you always tie it off with a double stopper. So that's Blake's hitch with a double stopper. Needs to have a stopper knot or tie off, because the tail can creep back into the knot, and if the tail even gets a little bit through the knot, then the knot fails and collapses and you'll fall out of the tree. It's really important to remember how to use a Blake's hitch, even if you don't use it regularly, because it's a foundational knot for tree climbing, and you can use it to climb a tree even if you don't have a climbing device. So say you drop your device mid-climb or something like that, then you can just tie a Blake's hitch and continue your climb. Okay, next we have a Klemheist. So that's also, we need a For that we also need a prusik loop. So that one's pretty straightforward. Just make let's do 1, 2, 3 and 4 wraps around, and then pass the end back through the bottom there. So that's a Klemheist. Good use for this friction for this prusik would be for ascending a rope as part of like a SRT ascent system. Next is a figure 8 loop, or a figure 8 on a bight. So that is just tied this way. There's also a way of tying this by retracing. So you tie a figure 8 knot and then retrace it. Like so. You'd use this loop instead of a bowline because it's stronger than a bowline, and you'd use it instead of a scaffold knot because scaffold knots bind up heavily and are really hard to untie after a heavy load. Next we have a Munter hitch. So a Munter hitch looks like this. The other way. That is a Munter hitch. You could use this for controlling friction in a climbing system, or if you drop your descender, like your figure 8, and you want to drop out, you want to descend from a tree, using that particular method, then you can swap out. You have a carabiner handy. Then you can swap it out for a Munter hitch. If you're going to use it to descend, you need to back up the tail end with a prusik hitch. Next we have a Distel hitch. So for that we need a little sewn hitch loop and another piece of rope. So this one's usually tied with at least 4 wraps. Oh, going the wrong way. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to tie this one with 5 though. I'm going to whack a pulley on here, so it's tied as like a hitch with a hitch lining pulley and a carabiner. So that is the Distel hitch. I've selected this hitch rather than the other 3 because it has a smaller setting distance. So when you tend slack, the setting distance is, or the sit back, is how much the device or the carabiner drops back down once you've minded the slack in the system. And negative of the Distel, whereas compared to the VT, the Valdetane Tress, is that it can bind up a lot harder than a Valdetane tress. Yeah, the distal hitch will you can't. It's harder to tend slack. It won't tend as easily as a Valdetane tress. Okay, here is a tied bowline bight that I'm going to check and confirm it's suitable for use. So I can tell that this is correct and suitable for use. This loop here is pushing this part, these two pieces of rope against this piece of rope. This is pushing these two against these two. This is pushing this against that. This is pushing. It's essentially bonded itself together. It's made a bowline shape, but doubled up everywhere except for this bottom part of the knot. Here I have a tied Zeppelin bend, so we're going to check and confirm this is suitable for use. So first of all, we have a tail on either end, which is 5 times the rope diameter. You can see that it's tied correctly, as the initial loops are facing. The initial loop on this one you can see was facing upwards, and the initial loop on this one was facing downwards, and they were both on the outside of the knot, and they wrapped over the active end of the knot and have pushed through the middle of the knot to complete the Zeppelin bend. Okay, now we're checking for false knots. One of them on the list was the Evil Imposter, and I'm pretty sure it's this, which is a Alpine butterfly that's been tied incorrectly. There is a way to do it on a bight, but I haven't been able to figure it out. I had to tie it from the starting, I had to thread it, essentially. Kind of looks like an Alpine butterfly, but the middle loops aren't interlocked, so this can actually slip off the end, and then it turns into a Marlinespike. So as opposed to what a Alpine butterfly is supposed to look like, because these two strands here interlocked back here, one can't slip up and over the other. That's being stopped by the other one. So I think that's the Evil Imposter. A false scaffold knot is this. I'll tie it a bit longer. It's this. So whereas you can't, when you pull the active end of the knot, active end of the rope, it does nothing, but if you pull the tail, it'll cinch it, which means that if you pull it the other way, then the tail can just pop loose of the knot. So if you've got a carabiner looped in there, if you keep pulling on that load, then it can just pop out and the carabiner can come off. So that's dangerous. A flat figure 8 bend. People think that the overhand bend is the European death knot, the EDK, but the real European death knot is the flat figure 8 bend, which is this knot. Which some people, especially in rock climbing, will use it for joining two ends of the rope. Join ends of two different ropes together. But what happens if you pull on this is the knot can roll, even if it's tied really nicely. Is the bottom of the knot, as you pull these two ropes apart, can flip over itself, and it'll actually just keep doing that until the knot just rolls off the end of the rope and the two ropes come apart. So it's bad. Never tie one of those. And a cowboy bowline is just the bowline tied in such a way that the tail ends up on the far out. I'm having trouble even tying this. Tail ends up on the outside of the loop, like so. From what I've seen online, I think with cyclic loading, if the tail's on the outside, it's more likely to sort of slip out. It's more likely to creep and slip out. So the way it should be tied is with the tail on the inside, like that. Okay, I'm gonna assess a sample rope. So this is my lanyard. So what I do is I run my hand over it and I look for any spots, any like flat spots, any lumps, any bumps, any damaged sheath. So there's a little bit of sheath damage there. It's probably just from running over like a rough bit of bark or something like that. Not worried about that. That's just a bit of fluff on the sheath. Keep running my hand along it. It's looking a little bit worn here. That's sort of more toward like the active end of the lanyard. Pretty normal. Doesn't feel like it's burnt, like friction burnt or anything like that. A bit more fluff. Let's untie this. And there's a bit more fluff here. Pretty sure I nicked this with my handsaw a while back. But yeah, it hasn't, it's just pulled up a little bit of the sheath. And you can see it hasn't, like, there's no core exposed. There's no flat bits. It's not lumpy or anything like that. Have a quick look at the sewn eye on the inside here. Yep, it's all looking good. Doesn't look like it's worn out on the inside there. See if we can find a... here we go. Discard by 03/2029. So it was manufactured in March 2021. So we're actually probably getting to the point, I think 5 years is when you're supposed to, like, strictly supposed to retire things. It's like a 5-year active life and a 10-year shelf life. So yeah, this one's probably getting toward the end of its life, but still got at least 2 weeks out of it.